If you're a B2B business, a B2B tech company, or a B2B marketer, you're in the right place. Coming to you from Studio 26, this is the Interesting B2B Marketers podcast, bringing you interesting contemporary takes, industry tips, guest interviews, and true stories from B2B marketers in the trenches. Now, here's your host, Steve Goldhaber.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Studio 26 and the Interesting B2B Marketers podcast. I'm joined by Jeff today. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Steve. I look forward to the discussion.
Yeah, awesome. And I have to note, for the loyal viewers here, those who have been watching on video, not just audio, but you'll notice a very different background behind me. And that's because I'm in my new office. We had just renovated a home. We've been doing this for about 8 or 9 months now. So we moved in. And my new office, shocker, is not built yet. We're about a month behind on that. So it'll be interesting as we do more shows. You'll see the office slowly come to life. So anyway, Jeff, give us a quick 60-second overview of who you are and your experiences that you've had as a marketer so far.
Awesome. Well, and oddly enough, I'm in a temporary spot. If people typically watch my webinar series or anything, I have these beautiful posters and music stuff all over the wall. I am in an interim space for many reasons we won't get into right now. But I'm Jeff Coyle. I'm the co-founder and chief strategy officer for MarketMuse. I've been in the content strategy, lead gen, search engine optimization, and I'm even building products in information retrieval and search engines for about 25 years. I worked initially at a company called Knowledge Storm. We were sold to a company, if you're a B2B marketer, you probably know them, Tech Target, where I worked for many years as their in-house, leading the content strategy search team, as well as part of the product management team. I created MarketMuse and as a co-founder about now 8 years ago, as amazing as that is, to solve a lot of problems that content teams have, content strategists have, and search engine optimization team have about making decisions with content and then executing successfully.
Yep. Awesome. You and I have very similar backgrounds. So it's either going to be a great conversation or horrible. Sometimes the people with totally different backgrounds, I'm like, we need to talk. I have no idea what you just said. But anyway, we're going to jump into the first case. This one has to do with things that all B2B marketers love and hate. It's the budgeting process and how you make decisions around what you should do with that factored into it. So anyway, take it away. Case number one.
Sure thing. This is a story of basically a team who, a lot of B2B marketing, especially in the B2B tech orgs, they typically get at the beginning of the year, they get their budget allocation, right? And it's usually uniform across product lines. And also they'll typically get their KPIs that they're looking to influence. So we need to increase leads X amount this year, or some sort of traffic number, depending on how much they attribute successfully. Well, this example is where a company, there's a B2B technology company, they have two main product lines, and they were in the networking and that type of space. And the two product lines, basically the goal was increase leads by 30% for each of those product lines. And they're like, oh gosh, how exactly do we do that? And the goal was that they needed to spread that out with paid and organic search. And the organic search component was a big chunk of where the lead flow was supposed to be expected. So who were they looking to? Looking for solutions like, MarketMuse, what I do. The big change for me was being willing to look at them and say, hey, this isn't going to work. And the reason why that's not going to work is because you don't have existing authority on both of those product lines. Because every product line associates with a collection of concepts. And each one of those concepts, your site, your brand, your entity has a different existing power. Imagine it as power and momentum built up through the content that you've created, through the public relations efforts, through the existing the momentum that the content has. And so going back and saying, well, when I look at the breadth and the depth of coverage and the quality of coverage you have, and the impact of, in this case, user-generated content via their support forum, via their customer portal, which gave insights post-purchase, the forgotten part of the funnel, post-purchase troubleshooting, champion development.
Yeah, who cares? That's all boring. We don't
need those things. Well, those things were very powerful for the one product line, right? Where the other one, they weren't. It was a little bit thinner. And so when I went back to the lead and said, well, here's the thing, you're going to have to create for this one product line to put points on the board that we estimated based on percentage conversion rates that we estimated we would increase 30%. You're going to have to create and update about 3x the amount of content as the other product line, right? And they were like, that doesn't compute, right? We thought we were going to put in the same amount and come out of the bottom. And that changed everything for this business. they were like, wait a second, we can't just put in $1 and get a predictable dollar out with content. We have to make decisions based on quick wins, based on where we have strengths. We have to use some parts of our site we might not have traditionally thought we needed to use. And what they made the decision to do, hilariously enough, in this case, is invest only in the easy one for the first half of the year to see if this content strategy dynamic works, and not, spend that 3x amount, but go and revisit it after time. What this also did was it really changed the way that they allocate budget for content marketing campaigns. Being willing to look in the mirror first, conduct the often bad word of an inventory and and evaluate where strengths and weaknesses would actually yield, tremendous, significant outcomes. And the hit rate on the content really, really matters. And so where we were looking at historical hit rates for them of, less than 10%. So they were creating content and less than 10% of those content items were having a yield as far as traffic or conversions. And so what they did was they invested in some conversion rate optimization techniques, the one product line, and invested in making great decisions on what they should create. What that led to was in that first 6 months, hitting the 30% goal, which was awesome. And then saying, okay, well, this thing works. Let's invest in the other product line, but let's invest that 3x, 4x actually, and keep investing in the one that's working. The big takeaway is if you're getting uniform growth projections per product line, the amount you put in is likely going to have to be different for each one to get the same outcomes. And that your existing successes and your percentage, your batting average, for example, should always be influencing that budget.
Yeah. I want to jump into what you just talked about for a second, which is CRO. It's a world that fascinates me, and I've always embraced it, yet I won't take it so far where, like, if you work with someone who's just all CRO, you get it to a point where the brand just starts to like, oh my God, like this is too confusing, and I'm being asked to do so many things. So like, tell us about that balance between, yes, these are really healthy CRO things to implement, and then where's that line where you can't take it incredibly too far?
So the most orchestrated CRO practices really, really focus on, I think the diagnosis that maybe things aren't working very well is that the CRO team views their landing pages as being separate from other content. That's the hugest strike that I see.
Yeah.
Whereas a more effective, team that isn't siloed in that way will look to entrance pages as being, funnel dependent or journey dependent conversion strategy. So if you have an early stage awareness content item, realistic expectation of what we call wayfinding. So clicking on other stuff on the page is one goal. It doesn't have to be an immediate conversion. And if you do get an immediate conversion, it needs to be to a funnel appropriate conversion. So it might be a targeted download for 101 or early stage. That isn't going to be a lead that's converting today, depending on your buyer journey. But pathing someone into the middle of the funnel, pathing someone to that next step can also pivot to industry specific, showing them that you know them with content that isn't going to generate a lot of entrance traffic. So the three things that I look at for CRO are you lead crazy, which I'll call it? And I've generated 100 million leads, I believe, at last count, even before MarketMuse. So if you're lead crazy, and I've been lead crazy my days, right? And that's blinding everything else. Or are you calculating click-throughs and wayfinding, which clarify and qualify as being as valuable? And my easiest example is you landed on your guide and you clicked on an industry-specific secondary. That's as good as a download of a 101 white paper. And in that, you've shown them that you know them, you've self-identified. Now get onto your CRO practices, personalization. Software I use, Mutiny is a great example, Mutiny HQ for that, looking at your lead scoring, predictive lead scoring. That's when real CRO happens. It's a combination of personalization, predictive, and understanding that wayfinding can be as powerful as a lead form.
Yeah. What else about the first case do you want to share?
One thing that actually dovetails well, Steve, with what you had mentioned is they really leaned into repurposing for this. And so one of my favorite tactics is repurposing. And why does that connect to CRO? Well, repurposing practices can get you to get the most out of large scale content investments. So let's say I spent a ton of money on a white paper. It's this beast. It cost $50,000. Why? I don't know. Some people still spend $50,000 on white paper. A lot of times, how does that manifest on the website? One landing page that we optimize, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's, cuckoo bananas, right? So what we need to be thinking about is all the different ways people can find this white paper and be satisfied by that experience. And so that connects to CRO because they might come in, maybe it's a CRM white paper. They're coming in via CRM 101. They're coming in via CRM for financial services companies. They're also maybe it'd be a match for somebody who was a CRM for a music store. I don't know the exact thing, but when they land on that, if they're happy, it means we have a lot of entrance paths we can give to this one item. The same thing goes for user-generated content. Maybe there's a great thread in a forum or a content for customers. How many ways can we allow them to enter where we hook them in different ways and where they land is the same thing?
Yeah.
That's a big, big way. Get the most out of those larger scale investments.
Yeah, I love repurposing. I think what you just described is such a great way to, verticalization, focusing on industries. I'm amazed by the power of just changing out visuals and writing headlines that speak to industries. And, when I was a young, foolish marketer, as they say, I wouldn't have thought that way. I'm like, there's no way that just a headline speaking to an audience with a picture showing, it can't be that easy. And I think when you're trying to earn someone's attention, it is that easy because they ultimately, the role of marketing is for them to go, oh my God, this company gets me. They know who I am. Now you've got attention, which is what that's what you're trying to earn as a marketer. Okay, let's jump into case study number 2. This has to do with were you working with the team and you're trying to get them to think about a new approach, trying to not hold on to just what they've always done in the past.
Well, and this is a fun one because it's recent in my brain and it dovetails with the other crazy right now, which is AI crazy. And this is coming from a person who built a large language model platform and launched it a couple of years ago, equivalent or even better than OpenAI's GPT solution. The market wasn't ready for it, failed terribly, pulled it out, relaunching it in the next few months. But I've been around the block with natural language processing, and I am a huge, huge advocate for AI, using it, integrating it. I'm actually working on a piece called The Extinction of the If-Then Statement, things like that, which, changing the way business logic works. But what that doesn't mean is that you should be aiming to take humans out of the loop and think of content as a unit cost or a commodity. The same thing that you shouldn't take an entire campaign and look at costs and divide it by the number of leads and say, that's how we evaluate this is $32 CPL. Oh, you ever seen that before, right? And it's the perception that there's a time value. So, if you're a content business, and this is, how do you amortize content? And this is a financial concept, right? It's not a one-time cost. If you're a content business and you're amortizing your content with a one-time cost, you need to call me and I'll throw you to somebody who do your finances better. And so why would you think about that as payload? Why would you think about it as a one-time cost, as in how much does content cost? $1, right? $100. Well, first of all, it doesn't. There's a cost to maintain. There's a cost to investors, opportunity costs. And so when I hear of teams, who are saying, here's how much content costs, and they're really, really looking to shred up the cost of actually writing the page, they're missing the point. When I look at the teams that are thinking about content as payload, as in a unit cost, just like a lead cost, they're missing the point. So what we're seeing in this democratization of AI that's been brought in 2023 is, time flies. It is that the payload, people thinking about the end of that content creation lifecycle as the payload that they're creating, and not thinking about that entire journey that content has, and the journey it has after it publishes, right? Those are the teams who are struggling right now. Because you got people coming in, maybe they're coming from different groups. They don't know a lot about the process. And they're going, hey, there's this thing. It makes content appear like magic trick.
Yeah.
Invest in that because it seems like it's a whole lot easier and it's going to have better returns in isolation. The disasters that's creating right now are significant. The most important one, though, is that it's similar to the previous case study that we talked about, but it's the number of content items you need to create and the number of content items you need to update and how many of them are successful. I reference that as content efficiency. So in this use case, there was a team who had been previously focused on content efficiency, right? They, through middle to end of 2022, had driven that number up from about 8% By the way, the average in B2B marketing teams and publishers that I work with is about 10% when they start working with me. They had taken that up to about 30 to 35% and were just crushing. That means every 3 items they create, at least one was producing meaningful organic search return on investment. Okay.
Yep.
That changes everything for the business. It makes it so that when they can go to their superiors and get budget, they're like, yeah, 1 out of every 3 articles we create, like clockwork, because of these practices, wins,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It used to be a black box. We didn't know, right? Everybody, unfortunately, in this org believed that it was still kind of a black box. And they were like, we can generate 50 articles, a minute out of this thing. Why are we doing that? Why are we still spending, the equivalent of thousands of dollars per page? Because we train this team to actually be realistic and pack in all those costs. So the number looks big. A lot of times I'll talk to somebody and say, how much does content cost? They're like, I don't know, $500. I'm like, well, you're 10% efficient. So it's actually about 5,000 and you're missing opportunity costs and update costs. Yeah. Probably about 10,000 per effective page. Well, this company, they started reporting that to everybody. So they were saying $2,500 to $3,000 all in effective cost per page. Well, then people are reading Time magazine and they're like, wait a second, content can be free?
Yeah.
Maybe we should do that. So how do you coach out of that has been this journey, and it's been tough. But just to tell you the truth, there's been the practices we've enabled with them it's kind of fun because what we're talking about is support content, using generated content for support, always including a expert user in the loop so they can make sure there's a personal story, make sure that there's a fact-checking process, right? And the fun output of this is they were able to say, no, we didn't just go crazy and post 50 items where we used to publish 1, but we have doubled our outputs and kept our 30% rate up, right? If we had done the 1 for 50, it would be rolling the dice. Quality is going to go down. Who knows? The business could crater. We did this smart. We integrated natural language generation processes like large language models, which would be the equivalent of, ChatGPT or something equivalent. And we've done it smartly because we're thinking about this from the ideation phase and prioritization phase first. That has to be right. Then the content needs to be as good or better than our competitors. It needs to exhibit expertise, show that we have experience, and then we can execute better. If we can do that while also increasing volume, it's like breaking the triangle, the quality, the performance, and the time. And that's what everybody should be thinking about, because I'm sure everybody's got the knock on their shoulder going, yo, can we implement AI and take down your costs and lower your budgets? The answer to that question especially should be only if you want our website to crash and burn and die and our brand to be ruined, will we do this with a focus only on the payload. And if you keep that steady, you're going to win. So many people are losing right now. I'm watching ticking time bombs in B2B tech, in publishing, and it's because they're not thinking critically about that specific use case.
So I'm going to jump and I'm going to embrace the time bomb, and I'm going to try to figure out why a time bomb exists as it relates to NLP here. So, there's the good way to use AI in my mind. So meaning okay, we're writing a headline. We know exactly who we're talking to. We know the insight we're trying to connect with. I've written a headline that does what it needs to do, right? But I'm like, there's probably a better way to do it. Let's generate 10 other headlines and, I will be the judge of if that one beats my headline. That, in my mind, is a good use. So going back to the time bomb, what are the bad uses where someone is just unknowingly goes in and wrecks something?
Well, testing's great, right? Doing processes everybody should be doing process inventories right now because the world's changing and you can't keep up. I'm sorry. I can barely keep up with this stuff. And I'm in the weeds. I'm in the biz, as much as any human could be. So the best thing you can do is take a process inventory. Where are you doing manual labor? There's probably a solution for that. It's probably not the thing you have access to. Just keep that in mind. So a lot of people are putting, square pegs into round holes with the AI they have access to when there's actually something being built or that already exists that could actually do the task. So what are they doing? They're going, oh, it doesn't do this. If you've seen people gawking about, this doesn't do math problems, there's solutions for that, right? So whether it be the if-then statement, how do you qualify leads? If you qualify leads with if-then statements, good luck. Good luck, bro. You've got to step up. There's a lot of better ways of doing that. If you do your churn analysis with, one piece of product knowledge, right? So every type of use case can be considered. So the time bombs are where we're creating, the first one, the most obvious one is content makes its way to our website without a human review, right? At whatever scale slope Okay. Would you hire somebody at an outsourced person you've never met to publish on your website direct without human review? Why would you do it here, right? How much trust does that person have to build to where you don't provide a copy edit, right? A lot, most likely. But why are you doing it here? So what we're seeing is that that's happening. We're also seeing dramatic fluctuations in volume of production and no meaningful associations or woven together exhibitions of expertise and experience. So imagine all those things could come to a head. What we're going to start to see, and the time bomb that's happening, is faking authenticity is going to be penalized in a way that is an outsized loss. It's coming. The truck's coming. We're already seeing it happen in small doses. But if you're putting out content that doesn't exhibit expertise, the hammer will come. We've already started to see it where you're publishing content that actually provides bad advice or or non-factual information. The catastrophic impact on your business is top notch. I mean, there's one example. I'm going to make something up so I don't like dox who they were, but they were telling you, I'm just going to make this up in business to business terms. They were telling you an equation for a very, very commonly known mathematical and financial review item. The big old equation on the middle of the article was wrong. Imagine what that does to the psyche of a potential reader, the PR impacts. I mean, it'd be like having, tablature for the most popular song. And then when someone picks up the guitar and starts playing it, like, that's not the right song. Right? I mean, crazy, right? And so that's a big time bomb, the impact that has to your business. You could also be in a situation where you're providing advice that is inconsistent with the advice you've previously given on your site. Very commonly happening right now because people believe they should have awareness, consideration, purchase. That's it. So a lot of that middle of the funnel content that's coming out now where it's being generated doesn't actually have a voice. It's doing comparison without real experience. And if you want to understand where the time bomb comes with comparison without experience, type in Google product reviews updates. Okay. Google over the last couple of years has cracked down on product reviews that aren't real. If you didn't actually taste all the dog food that you review and you made up the fact that you have an appropriate expertise to compare those 6 dog foods together, right? And you made that article, right? And that can be vetted out and that can be programmatically vetted out. The fact that you're going to compare features, functionality, use cases, opportunities with your B2B tech.
Yeah.
And what if that don't vet out? Guess what? The time bomb is real. It's happening. Publishers are going to get beat down first. B2B tech's getting beat down second. Publishers are already starting to have their lunches eaten where they've taken humans out of the loop.
Yeah. So in that scenario, is it my tech versus your tech? Meaning, is a platform like Google going to rely on their AI to sniff out this stuff? Or no, it can't be done. There has to be some human review at a platform to penalize someone for doing that with not authentic or factual content.
No one knows the answer to that question. My perception is that it's an internal challenge to determine whether generated content versus authentic content versus factual content. All of those things have to be determined to be priorities. What we've already started to see is a heavy hand at enforcement, where the end result is certainly going to be some sort of composite. I mean, I know that's kind of a whiffy answer, but one has to expect that if something isn't perfect, if it's not an easy answer, right, then it will go through a wave of enforcement. Quality is a great example. Google's first machine learning technology evaluating quality came out in the late 2000s, early 2010, 11, most prominently executing in 12. And it just took time. It took time to evaluate. How do we want to evaluate this? Do we use humans to train evaluations? What things can we automate? Do we have to have a human in the loop to validate these observations? It took time over that. So what we should expect is that this is going to take time. There's going to be mistakes, and you don't want to be the person made an example of. And if you want to look at those examples that are already being made, one of them just went out of business last week.
Yeah. I think I'm going to pull my thoughts together in the leveraging my son. My son's 9. He's really into, baseball, football, basketball cards. And that's an industry that is just, you don't know what you have in front of you. And there's not common understanding of, is this card good or not? And then that created this whole other business, which is a grading service. So there's all these companies that They're experts. You submit your card and they grade it. So they'll say, here's the smoothness of it, here's the corners, this is the way it was printed, and it gets a rating. And where I'm going with this is there's a huge opportunity for a third-party company to come in and essentially grade content and offer some certification on it. So it's almost like a little bit of like how Consumer Reports does it, or, JD Powers, although JD Powers is very commercially driven. But I feel like that could be a really interesting area, is a new company that just says, we grade the content and, submit it to us. We're going to charge you whatever, $100, $200, and we will grade it on, yes, this is fact checked, this is authentic, and you get a seal. And that seal, as a marketer, you put that up in the upper left-hand part of your webpage, and that's how you start the experience out. I feel like we're not there yet because AI, even though the people in the business know it's easy to create content, it's not proliferated like it will be in a year or two. That's, I think, when you need some type of a lens through it, so the customer just sees it and goes, all right, I can digest this. Because I do think we're going to live in this world of like fake and real, and you're going to need to flag this is real and you can trust it.
Yeah, because you can still get by. And by the way, I have a couple of domains and an entire business plan for one of the things you might have just said.
Nice.
And it's happening. We grade content from a lens of quality and comprehensiveness, and then at the topic site section level, which is the way that Google evaluates authoritativeness, we have a topical authority metric, so you can actually understand where you have personalized competitive advantage.
Yep.
And so we can evaluate, does this site have a competitive advantage, and how high quality is this article at the page level? Because it's a topic page level quality that needs to be evaluated, because a page about cookies isn't about kitty cats, right? So you actually, it's from a math equation, it's a MN, OMN, big OMN, which is like all word page combos multiplied together. It's a super huge problem to evaluate a content item for quality. And so that's a nut that hasn't been cracked perfectly. The best person who has done it is certainly Google, and they've been doing it for over 10 years. You must know, I am creating content plans literally on trading card quality and storage. Honestly, like in the past month, I've created content plans for all those ratings. So I know way too much about the stuff you were just describing, but yes, it is ripe for that. There's going to be big changes related to this. The key is differentiating what is generated versus what is authentic versus what exhibits expertise versus factual. The problem is that square is a fuzzy world right now. And because those four things are actually four different areas of competency, it's going to be a hard thing. People are going to solve for originality, but it can be original and bad. People are going to generate, it can be generated and good, right? So there's a big problem there, and it hasn't been solved. And that's what the rest of the story for this year is going to be. What I have seen is, and I'll mention this, Steve, is sites get ahead of it. Have a great way of tracking the audit trail on your content item. If you are proud of that content item, present the audit trail. This was created in 2016 by Johnny Smith. It was updated in 2017 by, Janie Smith. We used technology to evaluate it and improve it in 2018. It was then audited for currency and appropriate intent in 2022. Keep the audit trail, show it to the user. If it was medically reviewed at that time, you show that audit trail to the user, guess what? It's going to be real hard to get slapped. You're already seeing this happen. There's a few companies who have published really comprehensive audit trails on their articles, and they're willing to publish that they use technology, post the software they use. That's part of the future.
Yeah, that's interesting. I am a big believer in the evergreen philosophy of content. I do think that every brand should have several pieces of content that, for lack of a better description, that are like a Wikipedia page, right? The good thing about Wikipedia is it's probably changing every day. Something's happening in real time, and I think brands should embrace that more. Okay, we're going to pause on case study number 2 because it'll turn into 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D. Now we're going to jump into the Q&A for the show. So tell us about your first gig in marketing. How'd you get started?
My first gig in marketing was, my first official gig in marketing, I'd say, was at a company called Knowledge Storm. I was an intern. I was the first intern that was brought in to build out the way that they classified white papers into a product library. I got there a month earlier from the other kids because I was on study abroad, who would come in, and one of the leads there had said, hey, we need to do a competitive analysis for a bunch of these sites. I stayed up all night and wrote a 120-page document, put it on the CPO's desk the next day, and they made me lead intern. So
I
that's
did.
how I got in. That's how I got into product marketing and product.
Did you piss all the other interns off, or were you the only intern and they didn't have to worry about the fallout of making you lead intern?
They hadn't gotten there yet because I got my semester ended slightly early because I was on study abroad. So they hadn't even never met
That's
me.
funny.
When they all showed up, I was already there.
That's funny. And you've been in it for a while, right?
Yeah, that was 99, 2000. So
Yeah.
wow. Mhm.
What do you enjoy most about it? I mean, is it the constant change? Is it the curiosity? Why do you like being a marketer?
I thought my life was going to be completely in product marketing, or product management and information architecture. My degree is in computer science and information retrieval, like creating search engines basically. But what I identified was that those same skills can be applied to do marketing in a very efficient way. So if you can create a search engine, you can evaluate how to make the search engine work for you, right? So I think that, the reason why I love it is because it's like putting together puzzles all day, but in a socially appropriate way.
Now I want to know more about the inappropriate puzzles.
Well, if you tell somebody, hey, what do you do all day? I sit around putting together puzzles. You're like, oh, really? Okay, cool. There's only a few persona where that's appropriate.
I do like that, I do like you describe it as a puzzle because that's what gets me most excited as a marketer are problems and puzzles. And I love working with, leadership that just goes, we're stuck. Here's our problem. We don't know what to do.
Yep.
There's nothing more exciting than figuring out how to leverage marketing to help them solve that problem. I think my experience in my career was like the bigger the company, the less problems you were actually brought. It was kind of like, we've been doing this for a long time. The new budget's out. Let's just do it again. Try not to do anything too controversial because we don't want to have to get it. Like, we want a really smooth approval process, which was code for just do the same thing. But
Yeah.
the smaller organizations or the ones who were more entrepreneurial, even if they were larger, they could really get to the heart of the matter. I want to dive into culture. And what are some of those things that you see in an organization that allow marketers to flourish? Like you've talked about the finance angle on content marketing and how to look at it the right way. What are the other things where you're like, hey, if a marketer can find this type of a culture, that's where you're going to do your best work?
Well, speaking specifically for content and I like omni-channel content and SEO, I would speak from the opposite. I would say places you're not going to thrive and things to watch out for. If search engine optimization, for example, is considered a second-class talent at your org, it's not valued, you will not be successful as a business. The business will suffer at some point. If they're spoken about as, at the equivalent level for paid social, if any of the main channels is considered a second class amongst the marketing group, those are ones to really run away for, whether it is social, whether it's community management, whether it's paid or organic or content, where there's separation of editorial with maybe post-sale docs at such a level that they don't talk to one another or they believe that one's voodoo and the other one isn't. That's another one where you're going to struggle if you are on either side for one reason or another. So I think that if I'm going into an organization and I'm going to be on influencing content, I want to see whether post-sale documentation, technical documentation, community content, user-generated content is being viewed at the same value as marketing influenced or editorially or product marketing influenced content. That's going to be required for you to have longevity and happiness. If those people are, or you're put in a role to inspire change and you're being hired as the change agent.
Yeah.
I've seen that work. It's a hard job. You got to want to do it. But companies who at least understand that, they may recognize that things aren't perfect. But if you're an SEO and you're like, no, we don't talk to edit. Like, that's not a job I want. That's not a job I want unless I'm the person that's going to change that. And I think that you can take that to the bank if you're a marketer and say, I'm producing a channel that has an ROI. It may not be the highest attributable ROI, but the business has made the decision to invest in this channel. It may have impacts on the other channels and it should be valued as such. And a key trigger word, if people use the word SEO content, okay, if they use that word, right?
Run. You must run.
Run. If people believe that they shouldn't write early stage awareness content because it won't generate great leads, run. So a lot of these triggers, if they get that everything works together. Everything you publish, everything you execute, every campaign, PR, all works together. And it's our group's job to attribute fairly. You'll have a successful career there that won't be, drenched in the goo of silos.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. The Goo of Silos. That's coming out on Netflix next year, I hear. The Goo of Silos. Good
Yes.
corporate documentary. There's a t-shirt being made right now with that on it.
I spoke at LavaCon last year, and it was like a room of technical documentation folks and a room of early funnel content folks. And basically it was about artificial intelligence is your silo breaker. And that should be the priority, not tripling or quadrupling the amount of content you create. We can use this information to take everybody's inputs in and use AI to qualify the validity of these efforts. And that's my dream for a business. It's basically saying everybody's inputs are legit. We're paying you to do a job. You are giving your inputs. It's not if-then statements. It's about true impact and attribution. And it's our job to navigate the waters of whether we're going to invest in a channel or not. And that's the key.
Yeah. All right. Final question before we wrap up the episode. You've been doing it a while. You obviously are living the test and control dream, right? Like you embrace failure. You're not afraid of it. You need it, right? So you're there. Looking back, what are some things that you would have done differently or things that you're just like, 10 years ago, I used to feel this way. I'm totally in a different spot. What are some things you can share with the listeners?
I would have failed faster. I know it's trite, but when you see something's broken, like truly broken, try to figure out why it's broken. Don't try to figure out how to fix it immediately. Take some time to get more aware of that and recognize that if you're in a position of being a change agent, life's going to be hard. You can't change certain types of people. You have to objectively evaluate the toxicity of situations more quickly. Some people, my dad ran a grocery store for over 40 years, right? You're taught at birth to, be loyal, to stay on. Maybe if you're in my kind of generation, you're like, I'm going to fight. I'm going to save this. Some things should actually die. And that's been the hardest thing for me is to recognize it quickly. And that goes with hires who aren't working out. And here's my test. It goes with projects. It goes with, human interactions. I still make this mistake all the time because you want to make it work. But think about all the times that, you let somebody go or somebody left. How many times have you said, oh yeah, they're in such a, better place. They're doing a better over there. It's such a high percentage, So you create opportunity cost by not doing things fast and decisively. And that's what I've learned.
Yep. I think it's a great lesson on when to walk away, and some things you just don't have to fight for. Even though you think you can fight for them and you might be able to turn something around, know when to walk away, which is what we're doing now from the podcast. How about that for a horrible segue? We got to add some sound effects in that just go like, wah, 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 sad trombone. All right. So, Jeff, I enjoyed learning more about you, and I thank you for coming on the show. And thank you to all the listeners. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and you can also go over to the 26 Characters webpage. That's where we take all of our historical podcasts and put them. All right. Enjoyed having you, Jeff. Thanks again for coming on.
Hey, thanks, Steve. Been a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to the Interesting B2B Marketers podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss an episode. If you found value in today's episode, please help grow the podcast by sharing with others and leaving a review. We'll see you next time.